We've seen a lot of failures in gaming in 2024, but undoubtedly one of the biggest gaming flops in history happened very recently with Concord, a game that spent 8 years in development, and a game that reportedly Sony had spent up to $200 million on, and it ended up getting shut down less than 2 weeks after its release. A miserable failure, and what all people thought was at least at a minimum a $200 million loss for Disney. And certainly things have now been shaken up at Firewalk Studios, the dev team behind the game Concord. Concord's director is reportedly stepping down as the game's return remains in limbo. But now we're finding out that not only did it lose $200 million, but in all likelihood, it's over twice that. $400 million was spent during the making of this game. Concord reportedly cost $400 million to develop, and that doesn't include the cost for Sony to purchase the developer, Firewalk Studios, and the reason they bought the studio was for this game. And this is all coming from Colin Moriarty, who obviously very big name in the gaming space, does Sacred Symbols podcast, doesn't do a ton of like breaking news reports or stuff, but obviously knows a ton of people in the industry, and people come to him with stuff all the time. And now we're finding out just how bad this failure was. A rumor from Colin Moriarty, host of Sacred Symbols, claims Firewalk Studios Concord, which was shut down around 2 weeks after it released, cost $400 million to develop. And obviously, there were multiple reasons why Concord failed. The price point for another hero shooter in general on the market that's not free to play. And of course, the seemingly DEI aspect of so many of these characters, the pronouns, all the bullshit that just turned so many people off. That's why all these trailers got ratioed to hell. And now just listen to this from Colin.
I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
Oh my God.
And
$400 million. And he would go on to explain that by the time they had got the game to basically an alpha build level, Firewalk Studios had already poured in $200 million. And Sony saw this game. They thought this has like Star Wars-like potential. It could be our Star Wars for Sony. And they decided just to get it to minimum viability level that they would have to pour an additional $200 million into the game. And that's exactly what they did. Not to get the game perfect, but to get it at the base level where it would need to be released. So that's $400 million spent on this massive piece of shit, not including whatever they spent to actually acquire the developer themselves. And then, he would go on and talk about this a little bit, about how internally there was so much positivity and you weren't allowed to say anything bad about this game. He described it as toxic positivity surrounding the game. A major expense was urgently outsourcing much of the game to other studios to finish building the game out. And the two fundamental games were not worked on at all up to the point where the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. There was nothing about how players make their character, all that kind of stuff, or choose their character and get there. And monetization. Two very expensive, very specific and boutique things that happen to games like this. Later in the video, Moriarty claimed executives at Sony and specifically PlayStation Studios boss Helman Hurst were championing the game and believed the game could be their Star Wars. He noted at Sony they were describing the game as the future of PlayStation. They had such major ambition for this game, it was referred to internally as a Star Wars project for Sony. And this is where we get into the toxic positivity levels surrounding the game. And it makes a lot of sense. When you see the way the developers reacted, like they were shocked that people were criticizing the game, makes a lot of sense that no one internally was allowed to actually give any feedback or criticize this pile of shit.
Scratching the surface of it. Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes. And a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe. You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently internally, about this game. About how like something's wrong with it, character designs are not right, and so on and so forth. They really truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game. So it's not that. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, it's some interesting information, of course, but it's that I had said when people were like, Concord lost $200 million. Now people were pulling that money out because that's basically how much like some of the first party games like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, etc., kind of cost in that frame. And I was like, there's no way that it costs that much. I was saying like it cost 9 figures, probably like low $100 million, but there's no way it cost $200 million. No, it cost $400 million. So,
and that is actually, when you look at the budget of all these games, that is the biggest budget for a PlayStation game that we've ever seen in history. And it ends up being a cataclysmic failure. Something that estimates were sold less than 20,000 copies, probably significantly less based on the player numbers we had, based on the amount of people that were playing on PlayStation as well. And of course, they've refunded all that shit. They've shut the game down entirely. It's hard to fathom what an incredible, total, and complete failure this truly is. And this should be a lesson. Maybe you should listen to feedback. Maybe you should listen to fans. Maybe you should listen to gamers when they tell you, hey, this looks fucked up. This looks stupid. This looks awful. Why would I want to play this? Instead of just calling everyone bigots and racists and homophobes or whatever else you want to label people, maybe you should listen to them because they're the ones that have to buy your fucking game. And no one bought Concord. No one bought Concord. No one played Concord. And as a result, PlayStation now has one of the most embarrassing failures in the history of gaming hanging over their heads. And they have no idea what to do. What do you guys think about this revelation? Let me know in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.